The Ford Bronco Sport and the Maverick are both pretty capable rides. Since they're both built on the same Ford platform, you're going to find some very similar feature sets, but there also are some very key differences between the two of them. In this video, I'm going to compare the Bronco Sport to the Ford Maverick and help you figure out if it makes sense to go for the Bronco or the micro truck, the Maverick instead. Starting off underneath the hood of these vehicles, there are some similarities, but also very key differences between the two of them. Inside of the Bronco Sport, you're going to find a 1.5-liter turbocharged engine standard, and that pushes out 181 horsepower and 190 pound-feet of torque. There also is an available 2-liter turbocharged engine, and that is just like a night and day difference in power. So the 2-liter pushes out 250 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque, which it's just mind-blowing the performance difference between both of those engines. Now they are also trim level specific, so you're going to find the 1.5-liter engine in pretty much all of the lower trim levels. With that 2-liter turbo, it's going to be reserved for either the Badlands or the new Heritage Limited version of the vehicle. And that Heritage Limited was introduced for the 2023 model year. So which way you go for the Bronco Sport is going to depend on what you do with it. But I personally prefer and normally would recommend the 2-liter over the 1.5. When we look at the Maverick, it does technically feature that same 2-liter engine, but its base engine is going to be a 2.5-liter Atkinson hybrid. And that 2.5-liter has 191 horsepower and 155 pound-feet of torque. And then we look at the 2-liter, it pushes out the same 250 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque as you're going to find inside of the Bronco Sport. And one of the key differences with the Maverick is going to be that 2.5-liter engine. Like, the fuel economy is just going to absolutely crush the ability that you're going to find inside of the Bronco Sport. So it's going to be dependent on what you personally need out of your ride. When we look at the drivetrain of the vehicles, the Bronco Sport is strictly going to be available in 4x4. Doesn't matter if you're in Canada or the States, regardless of the trim level that you're looking at. Strictly going to be Ford's 4x4 system, so it's an intelligent 4x4 system. And it does feature a series of different GOAT modes, which are go over any terrain. Touch on that one in just a bit. When we compare that to the Maverick, the base level, so when we look at technically the XL, XLT, and the Lariat, they all have the 2.5-liter hybrid engine standard, and that's strictly going to be front-wheel drive. Now, when we bump it up to the 2-liter turbocharged engine instead, that is going to be strictly all-wheel drive. So it doesn't matter which trim level of the vehicle you're looking at, you do have the option for front-wheel or all-wheel drive, but it is dependent on which engine you have underneath the hood. Now, on top of that, the Maverick also has an available Tremor package. That does require the 2-liter turbocharged engine, but that gives it the advanced 4-wheel drive system that's very similar to the system you're going to find inside of the Bronco Sport. When we look at the exterior size of both vehicles, they are very close to each other size-wise. The Maverick is slightly longer because it has a box that's available, versus the Bronco Sport, which is just a traditional liftgate instead. But if we look at the dimensions of the cargo area of the Bronco Sport, it is fairly impressive. But again, because it's going to be a crossover, we do just have a small trunk space if you do need all 5 seats. Now compare that to the Maverick instead, where if we're looking at the Maverick, it does have a fully separate bed. So you could have all 5 seats being utilized, but then you've also got 4.5 feet of bed space that's available, which is really, really useful. And it does have the option for tonneau covers and caps and things like that. Towing capacity is very different when we look at the Bronco Sport and the Maverick. Bronco Sport has 2,000 pound towing capacity when we look at the 1.5-liter engine, and then if we bump it up to the 2-liter in the Badlands or the Heritage, that's going to be a max 2,200 pound towing capacity. So you can pull a bit, but not too much in the Bronco Sport. When we compare that to the Maverick though, the 2.5-liter hybrid is going to be able to pull 2,000 pounds, and then we've also got the option in the 2-liter engine to pull up to 4,000 pounds, as long as you get the 4K tow package. So the 4K tow package does add on quite a few useful things. That package is going to add on transmission cooling, a higher capacity radiator, and an upgraded cooling fan. So if you are wanting to tow inside of the Maverick, make sure you get the tow package right from the factory, because if you just slap an aftermarket hitch on it through U-Haul, your towing capacity is pretty much cut in half because we don't have all of those added engine cooling components. I did mention fuel economy between both vehicles. Now, the Bronco Sport and Maverick, they are very, very close when we look at the 1.5 or the 2-liter engine in the Bronco, and then the 2-liter inside of the Maverick. Very, very close when we look at fuel economy inside of both of them. But I did mention that the Maverick has a hybrid version instead, and that's the 2.5-liter Atkinson, and that hybrid engine just completely smashes the fuel economy of the Bronco Sport. So if you are very concerned about rising fuel costs and you want to keep your fuel consumption down, you want to look at the 2.5-liter hybrid, and that's going to pretty much cut your fuel consumption in half. It's pretty crazy. Now, that's obviously going to depend on your own driving habits, how much weight you've got inside of the vehicle and things like that, but it still is pretty impressive. You're going to find very similar technology inside of both the Bronco Sport and the Maverick. However, there are some pretty key differences between the two of them. You're going to have features like the reverse sensing system and the optional blind spot monitoring system available, like I said, optionally inside of both vehicles. On top of that, both vehicles have the option for Ford's Co-Pilot 360 package, which brings adaptive cruise control, so that very useful set-it-forget-it cruise system. The Bronco Sport is also going to have Ford's Sync 3 system standard across every trim level of the vehicle. It doesn't matter if you're in the entry-level base or if you're in the fully loaded Heritage Limited. You've got that Sync 3 system, which does have the option for factory navigation. Now, when we compare that to the Maverick, it's got a stripped-down version of the Sync system inside of pretty much every trim level of the vehicle. But having said that, we do have the option for Sync 3 inside of the Lariat, and then new for 2023 is you now have the option for factory navigation strictly inside of the Lariat version of the Maverick, versus inside of the Bronco Sport, you can get that factory nav in pretty much every trim level but the base. Now, having said that, it doesn't matter if you're in the Bronco Sport or the Maverick, because both systems also do feature support for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. And that's a wired connection, so we do have to be connected over USB if you want to get navigation running off of your phone, but it still is available there as an option. But either way, you still do have the flexibility of being able to connect over Bluetooth in order to make phone calls and listen to music on your phone instead. Now, I did touch on the Bronco Sport GOAT modes, and those are go over any terrain modes. And it's pretty neat because we've got something that pops up in the cluster as we shift between different modes. We've got normal, sand, slippery, sport, and eco. And then the Badland and Heritage also give you the mud ruts and the rock crawl mode. And those are very useful if the plan is to take your vehicle off-road. We don't have those same drive modes though when we look at the Maverick, unless we look at the Maverick with the Tremor package. Now, it's not going to have all of the same options as what you're going to find in the Bronco Sport, but it gets it pretty dang close. And when we look at the different go over any terrain modes or the different drive modes, that's going to play with the traction and stability control, and it's also going to change out the shifting points to potentially give you a more aggressive performance inside of the vehicle. One thing you're going to find inside of the Bronco Sport that's not available inside of the Maverick is an optional front-facing camera. And that's going to be a Badlands exclusive, and that's essentially going to let you see what's going on in front of you. So if your plan is to take this thing off-road, having that trail camera is really, really useful because you can see what's going on in case you're going to potentially run into an obstacle. When we look at the audio for both vehicles, you're going to find a 6-speaker system standard inside of the Bronco Sport and the Maverick. Having said that, the Maverick also has the option for an upgraded 8-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system. Inside of the Bronco Sport, we've got the option for a 10-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system, so it just changes up the complete dynamics of the sound and makes it sound really, really nice. Now, the 6-speaker system is good because the cabins of the vehicle are both fairly small, but if you want the best audio experience in either, you're absolutely going to want to look at that upgraded sound system instead. The interior styling of the Bronco Sport and the Maverick have some similarities, but also some pretty key differences. They both have analog cluster screens, with the Bronco Sport featuring a bucking Bronco in the steering wheel, compared to the traditional blue oval that you're going to find inside of the Maverick. They both do rely on a rotary dial shifter, so you're not going to find a traditional shifter inside of either vehicle. You're going to find the option for dual zone climate control, and that steering wheel also has a heated option inside of both vehicles. You're going to find a wireless charge pad available in both vehicles when we add on some additional packages. So that's when we can utilize the wireless charging while we're connected over Bluetooth in order to stream music. The Bronco Sport and Maverick also do feature seating for 5. The Maverick has cloth seats in the XL and the XLT trim levels, with Ford's Active X seating material, so that faux leather, inside of the Lariat. When we compare that to the Bronco Sport, you're going to find cloth seats in the lower trim levels of the vehicle, and then you're going to find a leather trim seat inside of the higher trims. So that's going to be looking at the Outer Banks, optional inside of the Badlands, and then standard inside of the Heritage Limited. One unique part of the Bronco Sport that you're just not going to find inside of the Maverick, and it's the Bronco Sport Badlands specifically, but that's rubberized flooring. So if you are going to be taking this thing on muddy trails, really useful to know, you can just spray this thing down in order to be able to clean it off. The Badlands also features a hidden compartment area of the second row. So along the passenger side, we've got this little kind of like cutout in the seat we can lift up in order to show a little storage compartment. Now, when we compare that though to the Maverick, the bench seat in the Maverick in the rear can also be fully lifted up. And that's got some storage underneath the seat, and that's just something that you're not going to find inside of the Bronco Sport. So they both do have their positives and negatives when we look at the storage capabilities inside of that second row. Spacing is very similar in both vehicles when you look at the second row, so 3 full-size versions of me might be a little bit tight, but not impossible. And then we do have all of our anchors and tether points inside of the second row, so you could have front-facing or rear-facing child seats. If you do have a child, you have to worry about. You're going to find first-row heated seats available optionally inside of both vehicles. Now, one thing you're not going to find are ventilated first-row seats or heated second-row seats, just not available as an option inside of either ride. Both vehicles also do have the option for a little moonroof. It's not going to be a panoramic sunroof like what we're going to find in a number of other Ford vehicles, but we've got a little one. So is useful if you're a fan of those sunroofs. You just have to add on different packages in order to be able to get it at time of ordering from the factory. One small thing to note is that the Ford Escape, which is built on the same platform as the Bronco Sport and the Maverick, got an upgrade for the 2023 model year. So it got an interior upgrade, few things on the exterior, but the big one is the introduction of a nicer cluster screen and the Sync 4 media screen. So because they're all built on the same platforms, that means that the Bronco Sport and the Maverick will eventually get these upgrades. It's just going to be a matter of when it's going to happen. I can personally see it probably happening in the Bronco Sport first, but we're probably a couple years out before we get that interior upgrade inside of these vehicles. There are some pretty great looking highlights though in both vehicles. The Bronco Sport has some neat metallic highlights throughout the dash and the center stack, while the Maverick has unique door handles and some pretty neat orange elements of the center stack that just make it pop. And when we look at pricing inside of both vehicles, the pricing is all over the place. Now, the Maverick is going to ring in cheaper than the Bronco Sport just because of the front-wheel drive capabilities and the 2.5-liter hybrid. But if we look at the Bronco Sport pricing, in Canada, that's going to run you between $31,200 and about $60,500, versus in the States, that's going to come in at about $30,800 and about $48,500. So fairly close pricing-wise. And then when we look at the Maverick, in Canada, that's going to start between $33,300 and about $56,000. And then in the States, it's going to be about $24,200 and about $45,600 when it's fully loaded. So they are close, but not close at the same time, depending on how you have this thing configured. But regardless of how you have it configured, here are some suggestions or some ideas of what you can look at for builds inside of both vehicles. Bronco Sport, the Badlands is my favorite trim, so I'd recommend the Bronco Sport Badlands with the Copilot 360 Assist Plus package, the tow package, as well as the premium pack. That's going to ring in Canada at about $55,000, versus in the States, it's about $44,700. If you're looking at the Maverick as an option, I'd recommend the Lariat with the luxury package, the Ford Copilot 360 Assist package, as well as the 4K tow pack. And that's going to ring in at about $47,000 in Canada and about $37,400 in the States. And that's going to give you engines that are on par performance-wise, towing, heated first-row seats and a heated steering wheel, adaptive cruise control, and a wireless charge pad. The Bronco Sport is technically going to be off-road ready, while you would need to look at adding on the Tremor package inside of the Maverick if you wanted that advanced four-wheel drive system. Having said that, the Maverick is also going to be able to tow 4,000 pounds, versus this build inside of the Bronco Sport is going to max out at 2,200 pounds instead. So, do you go for the Bronco Sport or the Maverick? I say this in all of my compare videos, it's going to depend on what you need and what you personally like the look of. Are you planning on taking the vehicle off-road? If that's the case, that's pretty much what the Bronco Sport was designed for. It's not as capable as the full-size Bronco, but it still has pretty good off-road capabilities. The Bronco Sport Badlands is absolutely where you're going to want to be if your plan is to take the Bronco off-road. It's just got so many other great features that are available that you won't find in some of the lower trims. I hear from people all the time that their Bronco Sport is also a head-turner. I do hear that from the Maverick, just not as much as what you're going to find inside of the Bronco Sport. The Maverick is a very useful micro truck though, so if you need seating for 5, but you're also going to need a truck bed in order to carry tools, equipment, or camping gear, the 4.5-foot bed that you're going to find inside of the Maverick is very useful. And I did mention that you do have the option for tonneau covers and caps and things like that if you need to make sure that all of your gear is protected. But that was a look at the Ford Bronco Sport versus the Maverick. What'd you think? Share your thoughts in the comment section and spread the word and share this video with a friend if you think they might find it helpful. If you're looking for some slightly more in-depth information about both vehicles, you can also check these videos out. You can find links down in the description on top of that. And until I see you next time, take care.